Hello, everyone. I am Leah Morris, life and relationship transition coach, and this is my weekly video for you. Today, we're going to be talking about how to stop resenting your loved ones or your friends and family, your partner. I see this show up in a lot of different scenarios in a lot of my clients' lives, in my own life too. So I wanted to give you 3 pointers or 3 steps maybe, or at least 3 things to pay attention to if you're feeling that resentment and that bitterness towards your loved ones. But before I get into that, on my Instagram last week, I asked you all to ask me any question that you wanted, and I would answer it today on this video. I actually got asked the same question twice. So I'm just going to answer that for you here before I hop into today's topic. The question was, what is your favorite part of being a life and relationship transition coach or of being a life coach? And so I thought about this question for a bit, and I think there's so many aspects to what I do that I just absolutely love. I love the fact that I can build my own practice, that I have that freedom and autonomy. It really answers a lot of the core values that I have in my own life, in terms of like what I do for a career, right? Like everybody has their own career path that they choose, and that's something that I help people with. For me, this is extremely, absolutely, completely aligned with what it is that I want to be doing and what I value most right now in my life. So it's hard for me to pick just one thing, but when I think about what it is that maybe I like to talk about the most to other people, what I like to celebrate the most, what I get the most energized from, 2 things came to mind. One of them is this idea of not aloneness. So when I was in therapy, maybe a couple years ago, really, I was talking about something that I had been through. And I think I asked my therapist something like, is that normal? Or is that healthy? And her response to me was that if only she could get everybody in a room that had experienced the same thing who had spoken to her, we would all feel so much healing in that simple act of knowing that we aren't alone. So the idea of not aloneness shows up in my practice as sitting with my clients and being able to validate and even express my own experiences when it's appropriate, and to tell stories about, this is something that's human. This is how this has fit in other scenarios. This could look a different way. Just really addressing the topic head on, naming it, sitting with my clients in it, it can add to that feeling of not aloneness and really make people understand that they're not the only ones. They're not some weird person out there that there's no answer to whatever it is that they're facing. I think when you have that feeling of not aloneness, it does heal on many different levels. One of them being that all of a sudden there is a way out, and that somebody potentially has done it before. And maybe there's even whole books and podcasts on what it is that they're talking about. I love to see people's eyes go from hopeless to hopeful in that simple moment of, hey, look, you're not alone. And not just saying that you're not alone, but like really being with them and explaining to them and validating them. So that's one thing that I love about what I do. It's like an instant connection piece. The other thing that I love is the transformation that I see. So what I mean by this is that when people come to me, there is a very good reason, right? Like they are wanting something to be different about their lives, but they don't know what, they don't know how, they don't know where to start, they don't know if they can, they don't know if they're asking for too much, or there's so many things that they don't know. And going from that place of lots of self-doubt, lots of insecurity, total lack of self-trust, to finishing my program really just head on facing the path that they've chosen for themselves and tapering off on even any of the questions they're asking me, that is just like so good. I love seeing that because it really says to me, change and transformation can happen for anyone. It can happen in any phase of life that you're in. It doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, what you look like. It really doesn't matter. We all have choices and we all have perspectives that can shift. And it takes the right support system and guidance and person that's willing to take different actions and be open to different thought processes and different perspectives to create that change. But it can happen, and I've seen it happen, and it happens over and over and over. And it's just like, I feel like I'm watching a flower bloom. I know that sounds corny. Or I think of like a butterfly coming out of the chrysalis. Like, it's a miracle. It's beautiful. It's rebirth. And it happens sometimes very quickly, sometimes very slowly. But when it is happening, there's just this like beautiful process that everybody gets to choose for themselves. And I'm just like, I'm so lit up when I see that happen for people. And that's why people come to me. They come to me for transitions, and those can be really tricky to navigate. So that's what I would say are my two favorite things about what I do as a coach. Now, to answer the topic that I want to talk about today, which is how to stop resenting your loved ones, I wanted to start out by saying a quick little story of my own personal life. When probably about 5 years ago or so, I moved from San Francisco to Sacramento, and all my friends live in Sacramento. And, or not all of them, but a lot of my friends lived in Sacramento. But when I came back to Sacramento, it was after really not spending a ton of time connecting really deeply with these friends. I had just come from San Francisco, where I was able to really develop some pretty spiritual, emotional bonds with people there. And when I chose to move back to Sacramento, I just wasn't feeling seen. I wasn't feeling heard. And I think I would regularly complain about it to my partner at the time. So anyway, I ended up going out to dinner one night for one of those friends' birthdays. And I remember sitting around the table and asking everybody, how's everybody doing? And just sort of initiating that conversation with everyone. And then I sat there and I waited for someone to ask me how I was doing. And at this point, I had had a margarita and I was feeling a little sassy. And I was like, why doesn't anyone ever ask me how I'm doing after I had just asked everybody? So cringy now that I think about it. And I think 3 or 4 of my girlfriends turned to me and they were like, Leah, well, we do ask you. You just always say that you're doing fine. You never really open up to us, and you don't have to wait for us to ask you how you're doing if you want to tell us. And so much of my ego in that moment was like, well, I ask you. And, all of these different excuses I was using to why I shouldn't have to be the one. And then there was this other voice inside me that was like, duh. I wasn't doing a good enough job being vulnerable. I wasn't doing a good enough job receiving support or calling on my support system. I wasn't reaching out. I wasn't showing my full self in my relationships, and I was expecting to be seen fully. And I think that I had a big takeaway from that, because ever since that night happened, I ask for support. I ask to be celebrated. I ask for what I need. I say what I'm feeling. I don't wait. And the resentment or bitterness or whatever it was that I had toward that group of friends went away immediately, because I realized they are there for me and they're completely open and willing to listen and hear and see me It's a two-way street. So I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but that was my problem. And I wanted to talk about 3 things that you can do, 3, to stop resenting or feeling bitter towards your loved ones. Number 1, having to do with what it was that I just talked about, addressing your issues head on. So maybe that margarita helped me out a little bit in addressing the issue head on that I was having. But I wish I would have addressed it much sooner, or any of the things that I was experiencing much sooner. So when we allow arguments to remain unresolved, or we allow any kind of issue or pain or hurt to remain unsaid or unexpressed or unresolved, this is like a wound that will begin to fester. I know that sounds nasty, but it's true. Expressing, they even use this in like medical terms. When you express a wound, you get out all the nasty stuff and it allows that wound to heal. So the same with any kind of emotional hurt, mental hurt, like you have to express yourself. So that's step 1. Step 2 is learn to effectively communicate your feelings. So this has to do with emotional maturity, emotional intelligence. You can't be reactive when you're bringing things up, although I know that's a natural, normal thing. But I think being able to state very plainly and clearly, hey, this is what's showing up for me. I think you can look into a lot of different communication techniques, like using I language, like I feel this when you do this, instead of you this and you this. Like taking blame out of things is another great tool to use, but learning how to really effectively express. So there's expression and then there's effective expression. We want to make sure that it's effective, because I think when we put people on the defense by attacking them, it will not resolve anything. So we're back at step 1, having like an unresolved hurt or pain. So this is where I don't really recommend having a margarita before you bring things up. Number 3, keep your expectations realistic. So I was lucky enough in my story to have friends that were just super understanding and willing to talk to me, and even like shift their behavior to check in on me more. You don't always get that lucky. So this is where it's important to really shift your expectations, I think. Especially like when it comes to parents, or dynamics that have been going on for a really long time. It might be time for you to say, listen, I just can't expect this person to show up for me the way I want. I can't expect this relationship to be what I need it to be. I can't expect you to stop hurting me, or whatever it is that's happening. We have to set our expectations to reality, because otherwise we're just living in a fantasy that we're constantly trying to fix somebody. We don't want to be that person. You don't want to be the fixer of people who just don't have the capacity to be what you need them to be. The same goes with you and other people. You're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. So they need to set their expectations correctly too. It's not a bad thing all the time, but setting expectations simply means getting in touch with the reality of the person that's in front of you, accepting them for who they are, asking for what you need, and backing off if they don't give it to you. So being unattached to the outcome, even after you express effectively. So I hope these 3 things help. What did I say? Address relationship issues as they occur. Don't hold them inside. Make sure it's effective, healthy expression, and set your realistic expectations. I hope these were helpful, and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you have any other questions, I love answering these. So that's all I have for you. Have a great one.